North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, who sits on the Armed Services and the Budget Committee. Senator, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
All right, so last night in that CNN town hall, Biden said he expects the Senate to have a deal by Monday on this infrastructure bill. Is that realistic? Is that going to happen?
I think it's realistic, but whether it's going to happen or not, we'll have to wait and see, of course. But I think it's pretty realistic. Today, the goal is that by the end of today, each of the working groups will have their language done. By the end of the day tomorrow, a bill outline will be done, and that should facilitate the drafting of a actual bill. Whether the entire bill or the bill in its entirety is done or not, at least it will be much more than a framework, and we'll have actual bill language so that people know whether they want to proceed or not. I think it was a good move to give the extra 4 or 5 days here as a result of last night's vote not to proceed without a bill. That would have been absurd in my mind.
Let me just ask: are you, if in the form that it's in now, are you going to vote for it?
If I was going to, I would have voted to proceed last night. I don't know, because there's no form right to it right now. There's an outline of ideals, but what we don't know, for example, Sean, I'm somewhat concerned there's a lot more for transit than there would be in a normal highway bill, for example. I realize we're going to probably have to give a little bit on that, but what I want to make sure is that this doesn't become the precedent for future formulas, because the formula for distributing highway funds is long traditional. It recognizes the miles of highway as well as the population. You might imagine that's important to a state like North Dakota. It has a reasonable 90-10 split between states getting 90% and the other 10% for grants, competitive grants. Very important to rural states. We have some permitting reform in the bill that passed out of our committee that would be part of this. Want to make sure that remains intact. And a framework doesn't tell us enough, doesn't tell me enough to be confident to say I would vote for it today. My hope is that it becomes a good enough bill that I can vote for it. I think it'd be good to have a good infrastructure bill.
Okay. I want to switch gears for a second, because you are leading the Powers Act, and that would reinstate sanctions that are being lifted in order to complete that Nord Stream 2 pipeline that connects Russia to Germany. Will you get bipartisan support on this, or do you think that Democrats in the Biden administration are frankly too weak on Russia right now?
Very interesting, because there are a number of Democrats who don't support Nord Stream 2. Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who's the #2 Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, for example, does not support Nord Stream 2. Several Democrats spoke out against the president's decision to lift the sanctions on it, and yet none of them have come on board this bill. A whole bunch of Republicans have. And I think it's very unfortunate at a time when we're trying to grow our economy, grow jobs, build infrastructure, the infrastructure pictures that you're showing right now. The beautiful thing about building pipelines in the United States of America is it's more environmentally friendly, creates American jobs, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. The private sector would gladly pay for more energy infrastructure. Not to mention the obvious problem with Russia having a greater lock on the energy supply for Europe. The European Union Parliament has overwhelmingly voted to oppose the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Several countries in Europe, of course, are very concerned, particularly some of the Nordic states and the Baltic states especially. So they'd rather have our cleaner, abundant, low-cost natural gas than to get it via a pipeline from Vladimir Putin.
Right.
Yeah, you actually released a statement yesterday calling the Biden administration out on this. You called it a slap in the face for United States energy producers and our NATO allies. But how much of a national security risk is this pipeline? How concerned are you about that?
I think it's a significant national security risk when you consider that places like Poland, for example, our ally, Poland, is captive to Vladimir Putin for their natural gas. That's a national security problem for them. And that means that they can't torque off Vladimir Putin in Russia. And that's true of Ukraine and a whole bunch of other countries in that neighborhood, all along the Baltic Sea, for example. And so why in the world you'd want to make them more captive, and you being Joe Biden is beyond me. Because now what happens is these are people, these are countries, they're NATO allies in many cases. They're certainly mostly allies who the United States of America helps protect. And so while we're helping protect them from Vladimir Putin, they're becoming more captive to a monopoly that is Vladimir Putin. So it's clearly has national security risks.
Right.
Senator, before we let you go, I do want to get your take on something that President Biden said last night about being the leader of the free world. Listen.
When I'm sitting across from Putin, who I know, he knows who I am. I know who he is. It's the first time I've ever felt the notion that I am in the office that is the leader of the free world.
Okay, so he is talking about he knows what he's done, but then he's giving him a pass on this pipeline. So how can he be tough on him? Only about 30 seconds, Senator.
Yeah, him and Xi Jinping and North Korea and a whole bunch of other places. The problem is he's not tough. In fact, he looks the other way. When you suppress energy development in the United States of America, but enhance it in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and of course Russia, that's not leadership. That's acquiescence.
Senator, appreciate you being here with us tonight, and we'll have to check back in with you, see what happens with this infrastructure deal.
Thank you. Look forward to it.